Weston.
I'd like to call the Plan Commission meeting for Monday, January 9th, 2023 at 6 p.m. to order. Roll call and declaration of a quorum by Secretary Parker. Sorry, Valerie.
Yeah, you're good. All right. Okay, Cronin,
Here.
Sagami,
Here.
Ermeling,
Here.
Parent,
Here.
Jordan,
Here.
Mumford,
Here.
Kinslow,
Present.
Maloney. Is in the.
He's out. He's
out
out
there,
there.
and
Yeah.
then Jason.
Yes.
All right. Moving on. Public comment. Is there anybody online or in the audience that wishes to make a comment? Second time. Anybody online or in the audience that wishes to make a comment? And the third time. Any public comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to minutes from previous meetings. Item number 3, minutes from December 12th, 2022, regular Plan Commission meeting.
Move to approve item 3 and 4.
Motion by Zagami. Second by Deason. Do we have someone absent?
Oh, wait, no, actually, yeah, you would not be voting at this meeting tonight, Dave, because you're an alternate and everybody else is here.
Oh, man, I hate when that happens.
Sorry.
Sorry, Dave.
I'll second it for you.
All right, so motion by Ermeling, second by Pincinel.
I gotta be quiet.
You can,
Oh, I'm sorry. Motion by Zagami, second by Pincinel.
I was just gonna say, I don't think I did.
On the discussion, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, so carrying. Communications, disclosures, and recusals. Number 5, written communications received. You have any?
no, we don't.
Okay. Public hearings. Zoning map amendments, conditional uses, and related requests. Project number 2022-0443, Intercity State Bank requesting a rezone of 2900 Schofield Avenue from B2 Highway Business to PD Plan Development, PIN number 192-2808-173-0162. I'll open the public hearing and presentation by applicant and or staff.
Take it away.
Sure.
Good evening, Vern Nystrom, Keller. So these are okay, so what you see in front of you is a conceptual plan for a new facility for Intercity State Bank on the south side of the site. And then a conceptual use of the northern piece of the land, which we are showing a multifamily there. So the reason we are approaching Planning Commission tonight, what is thrusting us into the rezone request is you can see the red line around there. That's our building setback. Okay, and then there's a blue line that is the hard surface setback. And you can see those parking stalls on the south and west side of that parking lot fall within that setback. Currently, the existing building, it's hard to see from my standpoint, but yeah, it's the same site. You can see the outline of the existing building there that is kind of in the middle of the site, making it an inefficient use of the site. The hope is that we can construct a new facility for Intercity State Bank, giving them a more efficient facility helping them be more productive and serve the community, and then also have an outlot, if you will, that would be functional for another development.
We talk?
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm sorry I was a little late here. Can you build this new building with the old building still in place?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so that was already asked, okay. So then once you're in operation in the front, then you would tear down the old one, then the complex in the back would go up, right?
Yeah, so they're looking at this as basically a mixed-use site. So that's hence the planned development. They do need, because of the setback along, like you see, there's a large amount of green space because the right-of-way is so large there. And they currently, that's where the parking lot is. So really, they're shifting the bank to the front. The use in the back would be multifamily, which is a good buffer to the single family, which is located across the street. Right now, there is no buffer. The existing bank was a church, so I can understand why it was placed there like that. But essentially what they're coming in for is their general development plan. So basically, are you okay with the use, the two uses on the site, the way the site is laid out? And then they will come back with specific implementation plans for each of the developments when they get to that. So they would come back in next with a specific site plan for the bank.
Can I ask, fill me in again about, what is the blue line and the red line through here?
The blue line is the hard surface setback or paving setback.
Hmm.
And then the red line is a building setback.
Oh, okay.
So you're not deviating off of it, you've got the required setbacks.
Not for the parking along there.
Okay,
Out along Schofield Ave, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
that's what
So
I,
it's just that corner that there's, the right of way is a lot larger on that side of Schofield Avenue.
So the ask tonight is just to deviate to that, that's
So
it?
the ask is to go to planned development, and that would then allow for both of those structures to be there.
So what's the proposed timing of the apartment structure? I mean, are you just asking if you could build it, or are you intending to build it?
I would probably defer that to Chris.
They do have, I thought I had it in there, there is a time frame that they have to complete it. It's 5 years after the general plan approval.
Okay, that's the requirement, 5 years, okay.
Before could you just state your name and address for the record, please?
Sure.
I don't know if you did or not.
I did not. Vern Nystrom with Keller, 5605 Lilac Avenue, Wausau.
Okay, thank you. And if you'd like to speak, just state your name and address as well, please.
Thank you. Chris Fender with Intercity State Bank. Home address is 3838 Woodland Ridge Ave in Wausau. So kind of echo off of Mr. Nystrom here from Keller. We have no specific plans for what we refer to as the remnant parcel or the approximately 1 acre parcel to the north. So the apartment building was just there conceptually to say what could go there. At this time, we have no formal offers or plans. And so the idea would be to proceed with the new bank construction as early as this spring so that it would be wrapped up probably about this time next year, maybe a bit later, tear down the existing location. And so our goal, as we're actively going to try to sell the parcel to the north, would be to have that ready for the build season of 2024.
That's great. One more question.
Go for it.
So, not that there's any competition between the municipalities, but would this be then the main branch for our city?
So that's a great question.
And twofold, and would Randy then be located here? I'm just teasing.
If he's not here, it's fair game. I think that's how it works.
I think Randy should be here, or whoever his successor is.
Right. No, it's a great question. So our original location on Grand Avenue in Schofield, many of you may be aware that we worked with Keller recently to renovate that office. We also have an office on the west side of Wausau. And This particular location, as it sits now, because of its proximity to the other businesses, and primarily the ease of in and out, has become our what we refer to as our main retail location. When we renovated the office on Grand Avenue in Schofield, we added offices, and that's become, it's never this simple, but you can think of it as more of our corporate headquarters. And so for the time being, Randy would still stay in that office. But we really wanted to obviously upgrade the facility. And we think this is a fabulous location for banking. And our goal is to be able to have more modern facilities, room for expansion, while still providing the retail customers, our day-to-day, what would probably be your village residents, the in and out with ease.
Thank you very much.
Your plan is not to own the apartment?
That is our plan. It would be our preference not to. At this point, we looked at a lot of different options, including mixed use, but just primarily the way that we envision the lot being divided with the access point off of Fox Street. It seems like a clean break with entry and exit from both sides. And so it would be our preference to sell that to a developer.
But you have no developers for it yet?
Nothing firm, no, just discussions.
Chris,
How much land they have? 1 acre, you said?
It turns out to be just, I think, a hair over 1 acre. I want to say about 45,000 square feet. That will be left in the remnant parcel. The entire property is a little more than 2 acres.
and Chris, does that, the Meridian and Schofield Avenue, does that affect your left in and left out?
Are you able to scroll down just a hair? So as you can see, it certainly does for, and if I tried to
Heading
hit
east,
you with directions right now, it's going to be backwards.
coming out, heading east is
Right.
difficult. It's been done.
It is, and that's,
Fine, yeah.
so what we see then is the loop around to Fox where they can go either way. Can't say for sure whether anyone would follow parking lots to a stoplight, but with the commercial space there are options there. And even really, I believe that some customers probably exit out through Mount View in the back, coming down to the stoplight in Birch. So it is a restriction there, but not one that we see as an inconvenience now or that would hold it up.
I mean, Grand Avenue is a full circle, to get in and out.
Grand Avenue is
This
much
would actually
worse.
have two. You can actually get in and leave off of Schofield, and certainly anything you want off of the other way. And then there is no way to get to Mount View now. That's going to be closed off.
Once that parcel is sold off, depending on how that was developed, you would get to Mount View by exiting through Fox and then taking a right, but no direct access onto Mount View, if you can envision where that development will go.
So at the present time, you don't have access to Schofield Avenue, do you?
Yes, it does.
Just like it
So
now.
if you do, that's a right in, right out. It's going to be the same thing, right in, right out, what you have right now.
Correct.
Yeah, and the only reason why I asked that, Hushang, is if Schofield Avenue ever got redone, if that would be an option for them to shorten that up, for them to have access, a left in and a left out.
So to take the island, short island.
Yes, it's just a shortened island to help them, because it is a pain. If you're coming from either way, I should say, if you're coming from the west heading east and you decide that I'm gonna go through the drive-through, what's your first instinct is to hit the second driveway, and you can't get in there. You're having to do almost like a U-turn to do it. I've done it several times.
Yeah, I have two.
What you can do, the way Schofield Avenue is, you're allowed to do the U-turn. You don't see any signs that no U-turn on Schofield Avenue.
Right.
So you can do the U-turn at any place.
Sure. You're just holding traffic up there, that's all, with your directional on.
Okay.
Nice design.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer, does this have to be two separate parcels?
No,
Okay, so if we approve it the way that it is now, that and
They have to
Carrie
come-
sticks with the new,
Yeah,
because
so-
if you're gonna sell that northern half, that doesn't have to come back here then to get,
it would come back in when they developed it.
Correct, but it's already zoned NPD.
If they change the use to something other than that use, so say they decided that it was gonna be commercial, they would have to come back in with a new general development.
For the back piece.
Yeah,
Right, okay.
for that piece.
So, but before that gets built and if they're gonna sell it, then it has to get separate, right? Jim's
They
point.
could do it a number of different ways. They're talking about separating it. At one point, we talked about it being condoed, that kind of thing. You can do that. So it would just depend on what they came up with.
Oh, so they could keep it, build it, and then sell it. I mean, it's not like you've never done that. I mean, back by Rennes, you ended up with that whole neighborhood and then sold it all off. Kind of?
Most of those were not all owned by Intercity up in those.
No, I mean, a portion was, yeah, not the whole thing, yeah.
Again, it would, so I'm just gonna sit down.
Yeah.
Relatively speaking, I think you can all imagine, we wanted to have someone for that parcel before moving ahead with the project, as most of you would think that's the order it goes. And so since we haven't found that right fit yet, and so much of this is still tentative, really anything is on the table. I would just say that it would probably not be our ownership's preference to own and develop. It has been done, but really what this represents is we want to move ahead with the bank project. We feel confident about the site that at some point, someone will be the right fit in the narrative. We have enjoyed providing some input into the comprehensive plan. There's been a lot of discussion about that, and there's a lot of different options that would be a good fit there. With us being closer to Schofield Avenue, it becomes less of an issue about who our neighbor would be or a shared lot. But again, at this point, focused on the bank project and open to all offers.
I think the new building, when it's, gets almost completed, I think it's gonna enhance that. And I think right now they might not be able to see it. When they see that, I think there's gonna be a little bit more of this.
Yes, and I don't think it's included in the packet, some of the preliminary exterior designs, but we're very, very excited with some of the ideas that Keller has. There we go.
Oh, wow.
So again, these are not final, but after some revisions, again, I would agree with you. I think it's gonna really turn that spot now. With the church area being set back, this would be much more attractive directly from the road.
Absolutely, I agree.
What is that bottom, go back to the bottom right one. What does that look like? It looks like a smaller version of this. It's got that lift up in there too, doesn't it, a little bit? I don't know, maybe just me. Looks a little Frank Lloyd Wright-ish, yeah.
Is this building
It's beautiful.
gonna be just the bank, or will you have some retail space in there available?
The design of this property includes an unfinished portion to the, on the west side of it. In this picture that you've got here, it would be in the bottom left, kind of the brown area. We are designing that so that it could accommodate a tenant. But at this point, it would be our preference not to have one. Again, that would just be more for future expansion, more so with offices. The bank portion will be very much a traditional bank lobby. So there would be room for future expansion. I believe that to keep all options open, we wanted to design it for a tenant, but we talked a lot about it. The plan would not be to have a tenant in the building.
So just for reference, this is 6,000 and some odd square feet. What is Grand Avenue's size?
Grand Avenue is
Over.
at 7,500, maybe just short of 8,000. So surprisingly, somewhat similar, even
Okay.
though they're different subjects.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Public comment period. Is there anybody online or in the audience that wishes to make a comment on this matter? If you could please step up to the microphone and state your name and address, please, sir.
Yeah, my name is Eugene Lampier, 3004 Mount View Avenue, right out the back driveway of right across from Lennon. And I don't begrudge inner city to build a new bank or anything, but I would like to keep that zone just like it is. So we do not have a 4-story apartment house sitting in front of my house.
Yeah.
With, right now, the thing they gave us, there's gonna be 40-some apartments, single-family apartments in there. And that means there's no kids. That means there's 2 people at the most, maybe transients, not good residents of the village of Weston. I don't begrudge the bank building, the new bank building or anything. That church, I thought should have came down a long time ago, before they went in. But they did it. But all of the people that live across the street from where that apartment house is, they're all more, let's say, elderly. And myself, I'm elderly too. I might not be around in 5 years, 4 years for this. I'm just looking at my house values and the values of everybody else around there. And the traffic, the way they have it routed there, yeah, they're not gonna be able to go through the laundromat and right onto Schofield. But they got it, so the apartment house, I mean, if you have 40 units, you got possible 80 cars coming out of there, and that's gonna be a lot of damn traffic for that Mount View Avenue. Granted, we got the grocery store and everything else in that area, and we have a lot of traffic pass there. Don't need another 40 cars coming in and out. I back out of my driveway, I look left, I look right, and thank God they put a nice TV screen on my car so I can look right behind me and watch the driveway of the laundromat. So that's all I'd like to say.
Thank you, sir.
My name's Laura Sliceski. My residence is 3007 Mount View Avenue. I'm actually just to the right of the laundromat. And although I do appreciate the bank building a new facility there, and I'm not opposed to that, I am very concerned about the outlot and the potential development of them. Again, as Jean had mentioned, the size of the complex, the number of tenants that could potentially be in there, the transient nature of people. We moved from out of state to come here to be in a residential neighborhood, an established neighborhood. And we are for development, but what I don't want to see is the traffic problems that can come with that, the parking situation. We already have people parking up and down the street on our area, depending on how busy the laundromat is and things like that. So we definitely would be back, anytime a firm plan is ready to be made on the proposed outlot. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments online or in the audience? Third time, any further comments from the public online or in the audience? Okay, hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Recommendation from staff.
Staff recommends approval.
And discussion recommendation to the Board of Trustees by the Plan Commission.
Question. I don't see that many parking for that apartment with the number of the units in there.
It's underground.
38
Is
stalls.
underground?
38
Oh,
stalls.
That's that white thing that goes underground right
Yeah,
there?
so they don't actually go out to any of the other streets. So they're proposing underground. That would have to come back and it would go through when they do their specific implementation plan based off of that and the number of units they end up going with. I think when Vern ran that was the density that would be allowed there. that doesn't mean that whoever purchases this will put that type of development in.
Just
Thank you.
just a concern that I have, I mean, to a couple of the neighboring residents' points. If you have 48 one-bedroom apartments and 38 basement stalls underneath, I mean, generally speaking, if you've got a couple living in a one-bedroom apartment, you're gonna have 2 vehicles. I mean, to me, just looking at that, I don't personally think that's nearly enough stalls.
Yeah, we can only go off what's required
Right.
in the
Sure.
code. So that would be looking at that section of the code.
How many fit underneath there? Yeah.
38,
Wow.
38, and then there's 22 in the.
Yeah, there's 22 in the parking lot, yeah.
Does the code only require 1?
Most likely for a one bedroom, it's going
Okay.
to require one.
It's 1.5.
You may get, I mean, the proximity of this, you may get an elderly lady who does not drive, because she
Right.
can pretty much get anywhere. She can go to the grocery store across the street. I mean, we typically use multifamily to buffer, single family to the commercial corridor. But that's a prime location for that type of development, just because it's in our retail corridor.
Sure.
Walkability.
I'm not knocking it, just a concern I had, that was.
Right, yeah, and we can only go off what the code requires for a one bedroom.
Gary had his hand up.
Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, the plan development doesn't necessarily mean that this has to be an apartment, does it?
No, they can come back with a different, they could adjust the general development plan.
So this could be a,
They would have to come back in, because right now you're approving that this is an apartment
okay,
and
Only as it sits,
Yeah.
like only the
Like this-
4-story, 48 unit,
like
38
this way,
apartment still,
yeah.
okay.
so they could do an amendment and come back and say, well, we want a commercial building put in there. and-
They could, but you'd have to go through basically the whole process, because what this does is it takes the B2 zoning that it is, and that's gone, and it's replaced with the plan
Plan
development.
development.
Yeah.
And the plan development has to be specified. What
So that
use.
comes with the specifics, so they would come back in with the specific site plan for that portion. If they would go further with the apartment, they'd come back in with that specific. If they want to change, then we would go back and have to redo the general development.
So ultimately on the apartment, they're not locked in on the apartment right now on their plan,
They're locked in on an apartment.
just not the specific
This is
size.
just not the specifics. That's gonna be
Okay.
based
That
off
would be on
of
the
setbacks, things
Second
like
round,
that. Yeah.
second round of coming.
Yeah, that comes through you guys.
So it would have to come back to us.
Yes.
Yeah, so the site plan will come back to you.
Barb?
Okay, well, I have 2 thoughts. Would they have to change their zoning right now if they don't have an idea exactly of what they want to do?
So some of the reason that they're doing this is because of the issue with the parking along the front. A planned development allows them also to basically master plan the site with you. So they wouldn't have to go for variances, things like that. So we put the plan development into the code to allow some of these unique situations to happen, because sometimes, I mean, a variance you probably would not get through because they could redesign the site. So this allows them to master plan the site with the plan commission.
So
Because I guess I'm concerned, I mean, one of the things they could be looking at is, for buffer, if you will, is duplexes versus I
You
have.
would have to come back through.
I have a problem with this big apartment, I really do. With where it's located,
Jim?
I read somewhere's in here about 5 years. Can you tell me about that? Like, does it have to be developed in 5 years? What happens in 5 years if it's not developed? Is that a hope or a plan or a dream to
They would
happen?
have to come back through, basically
So
They don't
they
have
they
that.
build the bank, Keller puts it up March 1st and March 31st it's done because they're good, right? And so March 31, I don't know, 20, 25 years from now. And the apartment doesn't exist yet. What happens? Nothing?
25 years from now, 5
No,
years
five-
from now.
5 years from
We would be
this.
discussing it, so we would probably look at rezoning it back.
So we would have to come back and rezone
We
it.
would have to look at it at that time
Okay.
on how to handle it.
But there's no penalty, there's no we pull
That would
occupancy,
be
we do
up
anything
to
crazy
the-
like that, there's no, I don't wanna hold these guys up, I think they should build a new bank, and I think this is a great way to do it. Like, their space is not being utilized the best way, but if this apartment thing falls through, I don't want their boots stapled to the table, because they can't do anything now, because, oh, we can only do this apartment. But we have I don't know, Starbucks that's gonna go there, or something that could work.
They would just come in and redo the redevelopment with the general development plan.
So they're not bound to 5 years. I think that's.
Well, in 5 years, there would be something there
Revisited.
by then. It'd be revisited.
And what happens, Chris, if you don't have something in 5 years?
Look to get it rezoned, is that right, Jennifer?
They could actually parcel it off, and rezone it to something. I mean, that's a possibility.
That would have to come back here, or that
It's,
could
the
just be done.
rezone process is all, anytime you do a rezone, you have to have a public hearing by state statute. So that would all get done through a public hearing process.
Barb again?
Yes, okay, now you're saying that in 5 years, if they don't do anything with it, you would possibly put it back to the zoning it was or
This would
whatever.
remain the planned development of that site. They could zone it off to something else.
Well, I thought the reason he had to have planned development,
They would leave the property as planned development.
okay, but they would zone it to something else.
The apartment complex, so if they wanted it to be something else, they would have to come in for a rezone. So your situation with, if they wanted to put duplexes there, they'd have to ask for a rezone at that time.
Because
To
it's
the two-family or a multifamily.
But it's still.
I mean, there's always different ways that they could approach this in the future.
But it still would be a planned development.
Right now, they're looking at it as a planned development to allow them to do a mixed-use site.
Well, I thought they were doing that so they could have the setbacks different.
It is with the setbacks also. It's a planned site.
So right now.
So we're proceeding that way. I mean, anything can happen 2 years from now, 5 years from now. The code could change, we could get rid of planned development, and then basically that becomes its own. We had that happen before. Renaissance had its own site, Weston Marketplace had its own, they were planned developments. So the code can be ever changing. So I guess, all I can say is we would cross that bridge at the time that happened.
Well, I guess,
Because I don't know what the code's gonna look like.
right, I guess my issue is that we're gonna rezone this for planned development, but we really are gonna have some type of apartment that, other than they gotta rezone again. And I'm going, well,
No, they came in and talked to us about, they wanna use that for multifamily. So that was what their plan, that's what I was going off of when I sat down with them. Keith was there, Kristen was there, bank president was there. That's what they approached us with.
I have a problem with the bank, but I don't like the apartment.
Obviously, without this being a planned development and your setback with the, looks like the hard surface setbacks, in order for you to get the bank pushed back, you're gonna be into the existing bank, and then it's not feasible.
That is an accurate statement.
Okay. So that's part of the reason why planned development is being done, along with, because you're probably not gonna get the variance, right? For the setbacks is.
Right, because it's basically self-induced hardship.
Right, yeah, because you can make it work on the property. You just have to affect the existing bank that's there, right? Or shrink the new bank up or shift stuff around to make it work. So we have planned development for that, and it sounds like, along with that, the ideal would be to have some sort of apartment or a mixed use or buffer, some sort of a buffer between there and the residential section. Right now, I look at it as we're blocking off the traffic that's coming out of the bank drive-through, which is quite a bit. That's my opinion, okay? Because the bank drive-through leaves, and the only way to leave is to hit Mountview, unless you want to do a U-turn and come back around. So right now, they're taking that, the plan that they're showing us is they're taking that out of the mix of it, and alleviating more traffic back there. So, but
you know, when I look at this, you know, for what, 2, 3 years, we've been looking at this TID, you know, this TIF district number 2. And we're, you know, we're kind of crying and mumbling about, you know, how do we get more growth? How do we get more growth? This right here ticks off every single box.
Yep.
Every single box. We are so low, this entire area is so low on housing. I mean, I'm gonna be in one of those, okay? And I view myself as a great tenant. And there's a lot of people that just don't want the yard work and don't want whatever. Underground parking and heated, oh my God, it's a gift. And I'm telling you, when this thing starts getting painted, I mean, and I'm saying constructed, I truly believe that that's gonna be even more value in the back. Because right now, people just can't see it. They just can't see it. It's gray, it's a little older parking lot. When that building gets brought up in the front, all that retail is up in the front. That's exactly what we're all asking about and want. And, you know, who's to say that it's gonna be, you know, not the best tenants? How about if we look at it positively and say, those are gonna be great tenants? And to Jen, I think she said, maybe it's somebody that doesn't need a car. Maybe it's more bikers. Maybe there are more walkers. You got a laundromat, you got a bank, you got fast food around the place, you got tiny and cellar down the street, you got an auto place to take your car. And a huge taco, what?
Fuzzy's Tacos.
What? I don't know about that. Is there a Fuzzy's Tacos movie or somewhere?
Wendy's.
In the Wendy's.
Oh, Wendy's. Seriously?
Yes.
Did not know that. Well, there you go. You know, you take your life in your own hands and go across Schofield Avenue, but I think this is phenomenal. I think inner city is gonna be a class act. I do. Class act. If you wanna see a remodel, go, you know, it's a very humble look on Grand Avenue, but go in that building. Oh my God, it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful.
When I looked through these plans, and we looked at these plans internally at our office as well. This is Keller did a phenomenal job putting this project together. It's a very.
Oh, I wasn't giving Keller any kudos. I was giving inner city all the kudos. I think Keller's doing exactly what inner city is telling them what to do.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, that's my view. I'm sorry. I'm just teasing.
They both did a great job,
I'm just teasing.
right?
Jim?
Jennifer, does it have to be built as such, as far as, so we show this driveway off on Mountain View? It must be constructed as such without coming back here?
No, it has to come back to you anyway.
Right, but, okay.
No matter
Yeah,
what.
there's a specific plan. I mean, they have to come back with this, that can talk to.
So it's not
Specific
guaranteed
plan.
that the Mountain View driveway will be turned off and that your drive-through traffic won't go there for the next.
Well, I think that's what we're trying to do. is pull traffic off.
I mean,
Trying to do
That's
it.
not a guarantee, that's not a guarantee right now, because this is just a concept of something that could go there. There's no guarantee it's gonna be 4 stories tall either. That's showing what could go there.
Great. So I've just one more question for Vern. Can you walk us through where you would have asphalt, or what would you have for green space moving forward? Like from, once the bank is taken down, do you guys have is it the sidewalk? I mean, you're not gonna obviously build a sidewalk across the front of there, but could you tell us before, if we zoom down a little bit, please? Yep. Like at the island with the trees by the, where would you end your asphalt before that project would start the future? Would that be green?
We haven't specifically pinned that down.
Okay.
With the bank, but I mean, how we're looking at it right now is that north row of parking. Yeah, I mean, we were anticipating building that.
Okay, yeah, so pretty much so you get out to that roadway cut.
And they'll have
Off of the
to,
side.
I believe there's something in the code that requires, they're gonna have to put that to green space.
Yeah, yeah.
So that whole rest of it'll have to go green unless there's a plan to
I'm
build
viewing
already.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was just wondering how far they were going with the driveway, and if it's, right now, that curb cut that's out there, this looks like their new driveway is only 15 feet of that, or well, not 15, that's a hard surface setback, but it's about half that curb cut, so that curb cut is probably gonna have to get brought back in. But I was just trying to figure out how much asphalt is going there and how much green space would be there to the north. So ultimately, right now, that's gonna be green space, and that driveway will get pulled out of there. Going
That's the
through,
intent, so the next steps, if there's a favorable outcome tonight, we'll be onboarding the site engineer. And we'll be working through that with the owner and with the village to pull that. So that our plan is to target that for the March meeting.
Okay, so ultimately, I guess that's my question to the citizens that live across the road there. We are for sure taking the driveway out to Mount View out in the next phase of this, or is that still gonna be, Chris, do you see that as a exit, or are you guys still just gonna go over to Fox Street?
I think the goal with the design of the bank is to allow for entry and exit from Fox. So even as you can tell the part that's sticking out of the thumb is the drive-through exit. And so I don't think that we would want to close off Mount View, we'll leave Mount View open, pave to get out there, because we want, assuming that we have no buyer for that, we want to leave that option open. So again, I don't foresee the bank using Mount View. It hasn't really come up in discussion, so it would effectively close that off from the bank traffic, but not, I don't think we'd be requesting anything permanent for the future. And again, when you come back through with the site plan, I think we'll see that that we call the remnant parcel, that what's left will just be
Green space?
green space, pad ready,
For now.
something to that effect.
Where would that north line be? North of the bank? Where would that north line, when you decide, somebody comes in and says, all right, we know what we want to do, get it approved, where is that north line? Where does the ownership start?
That's what I was asking.
Yeah, because I mean, so if you see the cars there that are for, they're potentially cars for the apartment, or for the,
They just have to meet a side yard setback.
okay, I know, but you got that entrance right. Oh, who just did that red line?
I'm drawing that. Is this in the right
Oh.
spot?
Okay, so that potentially could be it right there. Okay, right there.
Or if it shifts out, they could go anywhere.
That curb cut that's coming off of Fox, Mark,
Yeah.
that's gonna have to get shrunk down.
I see.
Where that black.
I see.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
It allows, I mean, that, there would have to be some type of cross-access
Yeah.
easement with whoever's there to the north, so.
yeah, to figure out maintenance on the asphalt and, right, common driveway
So
areas.
there's a little bit different when there's common driveways on where setbacks and things.
I had a problem, I was trying to figure out where they were coming out of from the drive-through. If the apartments, they're backing up and whatever. At first, I didn't realize that was part of the bank. I thought you were running into a wall. But-
She thought that the old bank there with the overlay,
Yeah, they,
she goes, how are we gonna get through there? I go, no, that's the old bank.
You know,
So,
but
yeah.
there's still, I think I would have concern with parked cars
Right.
right there and then people coming out of the drive-through and there's cars backing up out of the apartments and whatnot all that.
Well, I mean, when you go through a lot of the bank, I mean, if you go to the ones up on, where Festival is up in Wausau, you go into that incredible bank up there, I mean, that's really tight quarters up in there. When you go on Grand Avenue to inner city, you come around, almost to the water, and you come back, there's parked cars right along there. You know, when I go to a lot of, different, my gosh, just maneuver through Caribou Coffee, holy mackerel, with, a crew cab truck.
Is there sidewalks currently around the perimeter of that
Yes, there is now.
on Fox and
Fox and Mountain View.
Mountain View?
Schofield, they have all have sidewalk. Yep.
they all have sidewalk?
You can see them on there, but they're out by the.
I wanted to make sure we didn't end up in that situation again.
I would just add in regards to parking, given a bank's hours, which unless you're gonna run some very unusual hours relative to all your competition, you're not gonna have that much overlap between a proposed apartment and a bank.
That's true.
Yep.
Because banks are 9 to 5
Trying to go 9 to 3, but yeah.
and maybe 8 to 4 on Saturday, or 8 to noon on Saturday, and the rest of the time, nobody's backing up into anybody because there's nobody to be at the bank.
Well, have we beat this up enough? Your determination?
I'm not in the vote, right? Dave and I are not in the vote.
Correct.
All right.
Okay, just one quick question. Does this, you're saying that whatever they propose for this apartment building, they're gonna have to
I have
come
to come
back
back in with the
and
specific
approve it as such? And then the people can have some.
All you're doing is the general development plan for that. So it's the uses as
Okay,
they're
that's what I needed to know.
stating right now.
All right. You ready? Okay, is the proposed rezoning consistent with the comprehensive plan as required by Wisconsin statutes?
Yes.
Yes. Does the rezoning further the purpose and intent of this chapter?
Yes.
Number 3, does rezoning address any of the following that are not properly addressed on the current official zoning map? A mistake was made in mapping on the official zoning map, that is, an area is or has developed in a manner and purpose different from that for which it is mapped. If the reason is cited, it must be demonstrated that the discussed inconsistency between actual land use and designated zoning is not intended, as the village may intend to stop an undesirable land use pattern from being perpetuated. 2, factors have changed, such as the availability of new data, the presence of new roads, or other infrastructure, additional development, annexation, or other zoning changes, making the subject property more appropriate for a different zoning district. 3, growth patterns or rates have changed, thereby creating the need for a rezone.
2.
Yes.
2. Does the proposed zoning district maintain the desired consistency of land uses, land use intensities, and land use impacts as related to the environs of the subject property?
Yes.
Yes. All right, that being said, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion for the plan commission to recommend approval of the rezone request and forward the recommendation to the village board on the 1/16/23 meeting agenda.
I'll second that.
Motion by Jordan, second by Gurnt. On the question? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So carried. Moving on, items referred from the Board of Trustees. Item number 7, discussion and recommendation to the BOT on the following questions.
Well, the one we sell our houses, damn it, good. You wanna build that box behind me, the hell of it.
Great, is the public interest served by the complete discontinuance vacation of Dominica Street right away south of Mary Lane? And B, is the public interest served by an alteration of the Dominica Street right away south of Mary Lane? Jen, do you wanna?
Well, I think the question, I guess, would be either or. So in the December meeting of the board, the village board, there was initially desire expressed with a draft resolution to go forward with a public hearing on a proposed discontinuance of Dominica. It was unclear as to whether it was a motion, or I should say a resolution, to consider a complete or a partial discontinuance, or I think the statute refers to it as alteration. So at the meeting prior to this, the board rescinded this, that resolution, which needed some clarity. If the item is still before the plan commission, then I have to consider, based on the way the statute is written on this, for a discontinuance of a public right of way. In this case, the resident interested in proposing the discontinuance, who abuts this piece of Mary Lane to the east, south of Mary Lane, and leading to the vacant property right now to the south, which is owned by East Taffy, and he's considering a future development here. Joe Miznuski is that owner, and he had attempted to circulate a petition under the statute that would need signatures of all the abutting property owners on this piece of right of way, plus owners of 1/3 of the frontage of the right of way within a half mile, is how the wording is in the statute. Attorney, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but my understanding is that he received all the signatures required except for that of Mr. Tappy. And that had led him then to petition the board to ask the board to consider introducing this resolution to discontinue. So one of the parts of that resolution would be for the board to refer this to Plan Commission for their recommendation, and that's where we're at tonight, for the Plan Commission to discuss and provide a recommendation to the board as to whether or not this proposed discontinuance would be in the public interest, and the board should therefore consider it for scheduling a public hearing. Is there anything else I should add?
Well, I think again, there's two ways to initiate the process. One is by neighborhood petition. So that's the way that generally it happens. This is the way by initiation of the board. And so this typically happens when the board recognizes that there's a platted but unbuilt road that's no longer necessary, and it doesn't make sense to, waste any taxpayer money to continue to have this platted but unbuilt road. And that's the one that we are looking at this under. And there's a requirement that the village board only initiate the process if they believe that the public interest requires it. So that's special language in the part that involves initiation by the board. That language is not in the other process, which involves neighborhood petitions. So what you need to look at is whether the public interest requires that either part or all of Dominica be discontinued.
I guess there was some additional information submitted last week. After a meeting with Heath Tappy, that email that he forwarded on Friday is included in information made available through a OneDrive or a Cloud Drive link that was furnished in your packet. So I guess Mr. Tappy's perspective was that he would not sign a petition right now. Although he did leave the door open and said, it'd be something worth discussing. So I guess this isn't a staff decision. The staff's made a recommendation to not go forward until we have more certainty down there, essentially. That's what Keith has requested, but whether you want to advise the board to go forward, I guess that's the question before the Plan Commission tonight.
I would like to make a point that I read his email, and he did say that none of the preliminary plats that they have done were going to utilize that right of way. So full disclosure.
Right, so I have 5 different versions of a possible plat. He does not have a recent wetland delineation. Wetlands in that area have not been favorable for delineations. So he just does not want to basically make it so that he can't. So say Old Costa comes back saying, you can't use that one. He wants to be able to use Dominica and the other access. So he does not want to shut it off. He's just asked that he doesn't want to do the wetland delineation until like August. So he's asking to wait until we have an actual plat that comes before you that you guys are okay with.
Attorney Edie, when you say in the public interest, is this in the public interest of the 6 people it affects, or is this in the public interest of the 16,000 people in the village of Weston?
Village as a whole.
It says in the public interest, and I would say that would be in generally the public interest. So if you, again, usually it's initiated by the village when they don't want to, continue to have any obligations to maintain maybe a road somewhere in the middle of nowhere. I think that a solution makes sense, but it usually
that depends on the neighbors trying to figure out a way to solve this problem. And that's usually the best way to, to address a problem like this rather than, using government resources to try to figure out the solution to the problem. And, here's why this is complicated. Because if the board says we want to discontinue the entire road there, then if anyone objects, then it goes to the board for a hearing on what's in the public interest. And then the board has to vote 2/3 in favor of discontinuance in order to accomplish that. If we do 16 feet, the same thing happens. And so you've got different neighbors with different interests. The person across the street across the would-be street from Joe would probably love to have it completely discontinued, but wouldn't want 16 feet to be discontinued because that would move the road closer to his property. And then you've got the Tappy to the south that doesn't want to lose his opportunity to have the road there. So he likely is going to object if the village board decides to introduce a resolution for the discontinuance of the entire road. So you're kind of, in a pickle, really. I think that the focus should be on why it's in the public interest to be upheld as well, if the board does make a decision. We talked about that. And certainly it can be in the public interest to discontinue the road, right? If there's other ways to access, fire, police, what have you. You don't want to build a road just for the sake of building a road. So those are the hurdles that are in the way that complicate things.
Mr. Mumper?
Barring I hear anything else, I don't see any reason to make any recommendation to the board other than to defer until such time as the property owner to the south decides how he will approach development, if in fact he does. And in particular, because unless I'm misunderstanding this, it may all be rendered moot anyway, depending on what his development plan is. Is that correct?
So, this has been going on since 2018.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I was on at that time, yeah.
To an extent, I think it's my opinion that Joe needs an answer.
We had an email from his lawyer stating they were okay with waiting until September. There was an email that came from them.
There was.
Yes.
That's part of what I got out of there too.
Yeah, they're okay with that because that does give them,
It gives them a
right
faster
now, you're gonna
resolution.
say no because, or you should, because Tappy, we have no idea what he can develop down there. So you don't wanna lose that. His only option is to wait to see, because if Tappy can use those two and the plan commission is okay with what he proposes, then you can look at vacating it at that time.
Here's so the question I have then is, what happens if Mr. Tappy doesn't have the land delineated in September? Do we wait again? Or do we give him till September to get it done and say, you have until this date, and then we're gonna make a decision?
Well, and that could be the board's,
Why would
that's
you
the
force
board's
the developer's
decision,
hand,
but.
though?
Yeah, you can't, I don't believe you can do that because that's
Interest rates could be 300% in September.
I understand that.
Oh, well, we still want you to build this 75 houses here, but.
So can I ask the question, Steve?
Sure.
I understand this happened in 2018, but when was the house built? 2009
6.
or 6?
We
Okay.
got occupancy in 6, construction.
So the
started.
house was drawn on that plan, knowing the road was there. Does anybody want to bring that up on OneDrive so we can all see it?
Yeah, the house is not built where it said it was, where the permit said and was approved that it was to be built. The Village of Weston was there 4 times and inspected it, and there were no abnormalities or recommendations found by the Village of Weston, according to the.
So to that point, whose fault is it really? I mean,
Attorney Eady, I don't know. Is the village?
I think there's some shared responsibility there.
I understand that, but is the village official, is the inspector held liable for that? Does the village have legal liability and not an obligation in that
This may
regard,
not be a
if they're
concern.
negligent in their inspection.
Right. Well, there is no adverse possession claim against the municipality, which is typically what you make a claim for if you've been occupying space and have a driveway built, in that area. So the argument would be estoppel, that the village should be stopped from, negatively affecting his use of his property because of his reasonable reliance on things. There's the potential that there'd be liability for whoever built the house. So, but there's typically a 10-year statute of repose when it comes to pursuing a claim against someone for building defects. The question would be, when did he discover it? Did he know about it early on when all this happened? If he did, then he can't, estoppel is, you have to have clean hands when you come in and ask for help, essentially. And if you knew about it and didn't, do something right away, then equity doesn't allow you to raise those types of issues. But certainly there are a lot of, issues that need to be further looked into, which I don't have any information about. So if anybody thinks that the village is somehow at fault for how this happened, I would need to see what the evidence would be for that, and we need to know what the builder knew and at what point in time, and what Mr. Muzanowski knew at what point in time.
He purchased the property halfway through construction. So it was October of '04 is when Stan took the building permit out. They bought the property from Stan mid-construction in March 31st of '05, and Al gave final occupancy in June of '06.
So this shows from the property line, the front of the garage is back, 32 feet?
32 feet is what he said it was.
But the other drawing doesn't show that.
No, the other
It
one
shows
does.
building just adjacent to the road,
Yes, it does.
to the right of way, I should say.
Are you referencing this one?
Yes.
This one, that,
Yes.
yes.
So
That's the area.
how that's current, like today, how
So
it exists.
they're included in there. He came in 2018 with a survey. So he had it surveyed.
That's market.
It's in.
Yeah, it's in, I think, the 6th one, 7th one. It's not on that, it's in a
It's in a
different file.
different file.
Okay.
I think this is 3 and that's 6 or 7.
So he had a boundary survey of the property. And he brought that in with the vacation request. Because as staff, when we looked at it, we had no idea that the road wasn't there. Unless you go out there, you wouldn't know. Looking on any of the GIS maps, looking on the plat, it looks just like it's set up just like the rest of the subdivision. So it would be in a situation like out in Tappy, they have Moose Drive and they basically put the road and it just ends at the street. So there was nothing for us to not think that it did that. Because we were not familiar with the site.
So my question is, if you look at this, the way this is laid out, Jen, will they even meet setbacks if they push that building back to where it needs
If
to
they
be?
go to the 16, they have it drawn out. Our setbacks are different now than what they
What they
would
were.
have been. He only has to have a 20-foot on that side yard.
But it
I'm talking to the
shows-
back.
No, it would not.
That's what I'm saying. Even if they pushed it back to where they had enough in front of the garage, they still wouldn't have fit that house on that property.
Not in this layout. If you,
Right.
and his drawing wasn't to scale, it was just,
Yeah, and see,
Written on
that's
a
how
piece of
they
paper.
drew that stuff back then too. So the house plan could have been adjusted halfway through construction. I mean, Stan always hand drew all his stuff. So you saw what was in there that Al had. So I don't know, they typically would have staked everything. They would have had that road staked, I would assume, but
Well,
this was how many years ago?
I'm just gonna say, I struggle with this because I was here when Stan was, when we were at the other village hall. And Stan is the builder of this. He needs to have the building surveyed and have property lines put in properly in order to figure setbacks out, right? In order to stake a building to dig a foundation.
I would assume so, yeah.
So then when you ask Mr. Muzanowski, why aren't you going after Stan? Well, I don't want to.
Right.
But why? Well, maybe because he knows the statute of limitations are done with. Stan didn't really offer to talk about anything. He didn't want to talk about any of it.
He was
So-
the developer of the subdivision.
Yep, and he knows that.
His name is on the
He
plan,
knows.
yeah.
That's what blows.
Well, if you look at the plat, he would have known Dominica Street was right there. I mean,
Right.
he picked out the lot to be built on. And he bought it mid-construction or even before it started. I mean, he had the plans.
But I agree at this point, I don't think we can do anything until we figure out where the delineations of the.
And I have the other thought too, and I understand, I feel terrible for the owner of the
Oh, I
property.
do too.
But I also keep in my mind that the owner of the property to the south is also at the same disadvantage if we take action, right? I mean, this is one of those, to me, this is one of those situations where if you help the existing property owner, you disadvantage the owner of the property to the south. I don't see any way to help him tonight without creating a problem for the owner of the property to the south.
And technically,
Can you hold that thought for a second, Keith, and sorry.
Well, I guess just in terms of the driveway configuration and the setback. So my recollection when Mr. Mosnowski first approached us was to point out that the garage didn't have the proper setback. So it's a non-conforming setback 20 years after the fact. So as we looked at it and gave the thought that the 16-foot discontinuance could eliminate that non-conformance, but it's still, I think the driveway configuration, as we pointed out, was similar to one that was done down in the Windermere Oaks subdivision, in which there was just an understanding, a verbal understanding at the time, which was rectified with an agreement that Attorney Eady put together that just said, when the street's improved, then the driveway's just gonna come out to the next street or out to the street. Are you able to get the length of a driveway you normally have? Probably not, but that would have been a compromise. Certainly I think he made the argument that he wouldn't be able to sell his house based on the setback, but I think title insurance policies can certainly have conditions or whatever noted on them. It's no different than if the village or a municipality would acquire right of way along a frontage of a street to expand a right of way, and then, the setbacks become non-conforming. It doesn't make them non-saleable. So I think we haven't heard him make the non-conformance argument recently. It was more like he was just arguing it was gonna make his property unmarketable and I guess because of him making those arguments, I just felt it was good for Attorney Eady to be here as well, but I know they're not present at the meeting at the moment.
So,
Gary, did you have a comment? Go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
so is Joe okay with the idea that if there's a 16-foot movement or a 16-foot vacation, that he would locate his driveway on that? Or is he stuck on, he wants to maintain his current driveway, which would
Yes.
take way more than 16 feet?
Yes, from the last meeting that I was at, Joe, I listened to him. He does not want anything to do with it. He wanted his driveway off and out to the road. That's how he's wanted it. And in my opinion, I said, well, you're selling it. Well, maybe the next person wants to just drive off the side road, but he wanted to have his own driveway, that L-shaped driveway going out, and he wanted the vacation done, period. Unless I read that wrong.
Well, that's how you
I
are.
don't think we talked about it enough to know.
No, that's how the neighbor was online and the neighbor said, if we divvy it up, I'll give my half to Joe. That for sure was said.
Yeah, I heard it too.
And then he had a concern,
It's not our problem.
if it was a 16 feet, he wouldn't be able to park his car out on the driveway. But then we pointed out that there was, part of that right of way was kind of like your ditch line or whatever.
Correct.
That he actually his driveway would have more than whatever the footage was.
Well, and that's what his driveway looked like on his site plan for his building permit. It
Can I-
was a smaller driveway.
I'm just gonna say where my thought is right now. Do we do a partial discontinuance for the time being to bring his property conforming And now that we've been told via email that they would wait for the delineation later on this year, do we do the partial discontinuance now to make that property conforming and revisit it after the land's delineated? Is that a feasible?
This is where I was gonna ask the question before, after Roy had mentioned what he did, was, Mr. Eady, what responsibility does the village have since Mr. Tappy has purchased this property and has a road right away coming into there? And if he gets a delineation done on another section, he can't get out of that subdivision and his property's no good, can he come back to the village and sue the village now? Because they took his access, potential access away.
Well, we probably have to, through eminent domain, take back what we gave up.
But if we do a partial discontinuance, we can still put a road through there if needed.
But
And it makes the property
the neighbor's not real happy about that either, because then now it pushes the road closer to his house.
Just makes the road narrower.
No, I think it would have shifted it.
Shifts the road over,
Shifted it
it shifts it to the neighbors, closer to the neighbor's house. Because you still, you shrink up the frontage, right, or the width, but now you gotta slide the road over and put more of it over on his side where it would have been a buffer. Where like he's gonna get a buffer on his side,
You're putting all the buffer on the east side instead.
putting it all on Joe's side and taking all of it away from him. So he's gonna have the road that much closer to his house, which I don't think he's happy about either.
Could that actually be done without ever getting a vote? Would that have to be voted on too, by the three closest neighbors touching?
The partial,
If we moved it over as close as we could, and so now it's Heath and it's Joe and his neighbor, right? Well, that neighbor's gonna never fight with that. You know, he said yes to giving the land, but I would say, in my opinion, he would say no to that. Because now the road is right encroaching his side.
It's already, I mean, to an extent though, it's already a deeded right of way, so he doesn't.
Right.
Unfortunately, I hate to say this, but if that were to happen, there's not really much that he can do about it, I guess.
In the general interest of the public of all of the village of Weston, it's not in the general public's interest to discontinue the right of way or even shrink it. Because if that's not helping all 16,000 of us, it's not helping the potential developer or the potential 72 homeowners. It would be a different conversation if we had that development agreement from Heath that said, hey, we're gonna build it like this and we don't need it and life is good. We might have that in 6 months, but we don't have that today.
Well, ideally, that's the way that it should happen. There should be a petition, all the neighbors get together and they agree on what they think is in the best interest of the neighborhood. And then you guys have to decide whether that makes sense. You don't have the same, level of review that you do if you initiate it.
So did they not already have that petition?
but he couldn't get Heath's signature. We talked to him, was it a year ago, about that process, January of last year?
Joe, yes, we met with Joe in December of 2021, right?
Michael, is there any alternative, as Joe is speaking, to reduce the width of that road to, there's no sidewalks in that subdivision currently.
Correct, yes. I mean, a lot of the design standards is up to, this body as far as what typical section you'd want to see in that subdivision. But I guess to your point, yes, if 16 feet of that right of way is vacated, that road is going to move west from where it would have originally been if it was centered within the right of way.
And the neighbor now is willing to give that up and give it to Joe, right? Because it doesn't, he's happy because it's the driveway and everything's there already. But if you take a roadway with cars going by it and you shove that over tighter to his house, he's not gonna be happy.
No, his whole intention is on the road there.
Yes. That's his motive, is to not have a road there. But the problem that in my opinion, the problem is both property owners knew there was a road right away there on the plat. And when you're looking at your property, whether you're going to purchase the property, you should see a plat. right?
Well, they're paying taxes to that degree, so they're not paying taxes to the right of way. I mean, they're paying taxes to where those 4 posts are.
It's a tough situation.
Well, so I think it's gonna come down to what Attorney Eady said is, it's gonna come down to a 5-2 vote if all 7 board members are here. And which way it's gonna go, because I don't think we're gonna ever get anything signed. I think it's gonna go, no matter whichever way, Heath is gonna not sign, or Joe and the neighborhood will sign, because it's really those 3. The neighborhood's gonna sign no and vacate, because they probably, I mean, if I lived there, I wouldn't want the traffic to go down another road, you know. So it's gonna have to be a 5-2, because it's gotta be a 3/4 vote, right?
If somebody objects, 2/3. Yeah,
Or 2/3, I keep saying.
right. But you don't have to do anything.
Yeah,
You don't have to do anything either, but if you decide to do something, then maybe, having both resolutions, one for the 16 feet and one for the full amount of it, schedule your public hearing, let people object, come in, and at least you take care of it once. Because you wouldn't want to have a hearing on, say, the full, and then you don't get 2/3 support, and then try to come back with the 16-foot idea, and then waste everybody's time again with, new people objecting, and then it'd be a giant mess.
Can you do one public hearing with both resolutions attached to it?
It would be.
Would have to be
It would
two
be
separate.
unorthodox, but
Be back to
you could. I mean, you could have 2 resolutions, I suppose.
Or could we just wait until we get something, and if Mr. Taffy doesn't move by this fall, we can always schedule a hearing. I mean, I feel bad about the property owner. He's been sitting here for, trying to figure out what to do. But I guess, I'd be looking at that plat and trying to figure out where the road was before I bought it.
And one of mine, I'll just throw this thought out there too. If we move to act prior to Mr. Tappy deciding how he wants to develop that, we potentially harm that development, stop development of all of those lots, which I think would benefit the village. So then I'm kind of saying, if we move now, I'm almost thinking we harm the public interest.
Well, and I think that he would have an argument, if you went ahead and said it was in the public interest, to challenge that in court.
And I think
You
that
better
might be
be
legitimately,
able to explain
right.
why it's in the public's best interest.
That's where I'm struggling at this moment, because I don't see how that helps the public interest to move
Heath
now.
did say in his email, he would be in favor of a partial discontinuance at this time, when I read his email today.
Because it gives him the road.
It still gives him the road.
I thought he said,
I-
bring that up, he said,
I
he
could
wasn't
have,
gonna do either of them. He
I could have
was going to
said
Get a
Yeah.
lawyer either way.
Yeah, I thought he said he was gonna.
If there was any action taken.
Any
he would-
action taken, he
he would
wanted
refer
it
to his
deferred.
attorney.
Yep. So the emails from the other attorney asking for a sit down with, officials or board, some board, and then staff, himself and Attorney Eady, what are they trying to find there? I tried to maybe ask that a little bit. I just get a feeling that they don't want to go to a.
That's the only
Open
way you
hearing.
can, the only way you can
Yeah.
do it.
Right, I think he'd like to get together with Mr. Tappy and a representative of the board and talk about solutions, I think is what I understood the email to say. It sounded like they thought rescinding the resolution made sense.
Yeah.
And then moving forward with trying to reach an agreement on what to do before there's any type of public hearing. Because the worst thing that could happen is you go down one of these roads and you never know who's gonna object or who comes to the public hearing, and then 2/3 that's a pretty stiff majority.
I got Heath's email right here. It was just in the BOT packet. It says, regarding a partial right-of-way vacation, this seems like a reasonable temporary alternative I'm not sure this is in the public's best interest because there is lots of time and energy being spent for creating a partial right-of-way vacation. And everyone hopes that when this gets developed, that the smaller right-of-way can be completely vacated. If this partial helps the village, Joe, and makes sense for future development options, then I can support it.
Back up to go back to the front where he says.
It's right there on the screen.
Oh, it's right here?
Yeah, he said he's gonna hire an attorney if you vacate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I was talking about.
I want it open too. I'd want my options.
And Mr. Rundy's email that he sent out, I think, yesterday.
Well, because if it's that case, then he should take a partial to Heath and get him to sign it, because then we don't have to follow the process. We can follow the first one. And he does all the work on it. It still has a hearing, but
Yeah,
sure.
we aren't involved as much of it, and you guys don't have to make that public interest decision.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this email right here from Heath explains where he's at with it. I mean.
Oh, then
I think then they should do the.
I think they should do that and wait, and then if, in September, when he gets a delineation on it, if he wants to bring it back and vacate the whole thing. when
Well,
it's
then you
decided
find
he's
out
doing
if
it.
he actually really wants a partial, because he's got to bring it forward.
Right.
I
That
mean,
would be Joe bringing it forward.
yeah, I mean, I guess in there too, he does say there are still questions remaining for us to support this option. So I guess, yeah, it's up to them to work it out and they can.
What is this house worth?
Oh, I had that in there.
Three what?
No, it was two something.
Two something?
Two, or maybe that's what he purchased.
So if he sold it and it got downgraded a bit because of this, what, 50 grand?
Taxes.
Boy, if we would have known all this in 18, I think we would have threw him 50 grand and said, go sell
Who's gonna buy a house that you won't have driveway access to?
it. Well, at least,
Right,
yeah,
right.
true. Or we buy it. Put a pump house there. What the hell?
Keith,
Tear it
how
down,
much
put a
that
park.
land worth it?
Wow.
which land?
That right away we have there.
Basically, what
I
Jennifer is saying, how that would.
guess I don't know what the answer to that is, unfortunately.
Well, he has to pay for it.
I don't think we
can't sell
I
it.
think we can force
Just
anybody
give
to
it to
pay
him?
for right of
We
way.
can't, if we either have to vacate it or use it,
What?
the land, we can't sell it to him, correct? I
Oh,
thought
we
that's
can't-
what was
we
discussed.
can't sell it to him.
Yeah,
You can't get the taxes back. I asked him
Right.
that. You can't go back and re-tax him if we gave it to him. Do we have a park in the area?
We what?
Do we have a park in the area?
Robin Wood's probably the closest.
But I guess what Jennifer was saying is if Mr.
Tappy or Wisconsin?
Tappy,
Okay.
yeah, had to stop and think who is who here. If Mr. Tappy is willing to support that smaller right of way, then it's not between the village doesn't have to do anything then. The other gentleman will
You're
have
saying
to.
Joe would have to go up,
So
post
he would
that?
do the first option,
And
so
get
it would
the
be a
neighbors to sign
petition.
off on it too.
Yeah, it would
Right.
be all the neighbors, so he
Oh.
still would be required to get the other neighbor, because he's
The other
involved.
neighbor, yeah. He says yes, the other neighbor has to say yes.
So, so
Probably
it's-
not, because now it's a roadway.
Yeah.
Keith, do you feel that Joe is just after 16 feet?
I think,
I had the sense he wanted to complete this continuance, but
That was-
tonight they said they wanted to talk about options. I don't know what else.
the
I think they were
only
talking
option,
about
the only
right
option
away.
specifically they talked about was allowing utilities underneath.
Right.
And that's really not an option, you know?
No.
Yeah, we
But
usually.
I think they just wanna sit down, I think they feel like they haven't sat down, and I explained what you had told me. These are not sit downs with Heath in particular to this issue. We're talking about 2 or 3 different
He's talking
developments.
about
It
development.
just so happens that one of these is it, so it's not like we're talking just about this. And, so, yeah.
So Mark, why did they leave? Why did they leave?
I asked them that, I said, why aren't you gonna stay here? I asked them that again out there, and they said, I just don't think we have to. I don't know, they could be watching the TV.
there's no action, I mean, this is essentially tonight just a recommendation for
Right.
us to consider
Right.
next week at the BOT meeting.
Right.
And full disclosure, the board doesn't have to to go whatever route the planning commission recommends. I'm not saying that would happen, but
No, it doesn't.
And I wasn't aware
Well,
of that.
the board also kicked it back. Yeah, planning commission,
well,
right,
and
that's right.
Correct, and I think
Because I think the board's in a position of going, they don't wanna make.
what do we do?
Yeah, it's a very tough situation, it really is.
I wasn't aware that Heath had stated that he was willing to do the partial release.
Well, then he gets the road,
But I
right,
just said-
he gets the utilities, you know, and he's not gonna lose anything if it's a partial. And see, I thought that was a win-win. I thought that would, you know, move the road over, but now if the neighbor has to sign off on it, that might not happen. But my gosh, that would actually give Joe even more, you know.
Well, whose
land.
responsibility is it to get these people together to do this?
It would be Joe.
The petitioner.
It would be Joe.
It would be Joe.
So, you know,
Or his attorney.
let them know that or whatever and see what happens. And Gary, I was the one that wanted it to come back to planning committee because the board, it's such an issue, we wanted to get some more opinions and thoughts. Anyway, I did.
I tried to send it back here in November and I got denied. So we're a month behind.
So obviously, Roman, you do inspections now. We learned a lot from this, obviously, right? I mean, well, not being.
You're right.
That's why we're so intense down in Hinter Springs with Daniel and making sure that they're having everything surveyed out.
And you guys have caught some of them being off.
Well, we don't accept napkins anymore.
No, I mean, that's,
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's
there's
why-
been a lot of changes.
yeah, that's
Well,
why.
and here's the other thing, a lot of times, and I'm just gonna be really super honest with you, is the developer doesn't wanna pay for that, right? The guy building the house doesn't wanna pay for it, so he says, excavator, I don't know, just check the property lines, take your, you know, your metal detector and find the corners. He's not even there. And then they're pulling strings trying to go off a site plan, and it's the guy digging the basement that's doing it.
Yeah.
Right? It's not even the developer or the.
It's their, you know, excavating contractor.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we did have that one up in the town, that we had to actually put the foundation in too close to the lot line. And that got cut off and changed. So when Scott was, that was before I got here, but Scott,
I believe that was
yeah,
the third stall garage had to come off.
you know.
And he actually took it off?
Yeah.
Oh, I would have built it faster. I would have been 24/7, I would have had that thing so damn fast to make your head spin.
But still, it doesn't matter. They have, I mean, that happened with, I can't remember the developer's name, but they did it in the wetland delineation. They put it in wetland. The DNR came in and had them remove the entire house, foundation, everything.
But I can't remember.
So what's your pleasure? Do we want to make a recommendation? Anybody?
Why are you looking? They don't have to.
Bueller?
They don't have to. The planning commission doesn't have to.
Unless they would
If I
like to
was,
send.
if I was on the planning commission, I'd throw it right back at the board. I'm not actually saying that to do that, but I'm saying.
I'd make a recommendation that we defer any action on vacation of the right of way or partial vacation of the right of way at this time.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I just have one thing. Yeah, it's too late to ask a question.
I would say until.
There's a motion on the floor, so we either need a second or it dies.
Ask until they tell you not to. This is America, we're free, right?
If you make a
My
second,
only thought
you
is
can
the
talk
property
about
owner
it,
currently
otherwise
trying to
you can't.
sell, or is he in any kind of hardship situation? He needs to move that property immediately, and by deferring, we potentially harm him? No?
No.
Okay, that's my
Never been
question.
up for sale.
Then I'll second the motion.
Motion by Pincinel, second by Mumper. On the discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No,
So carried. All right, item number 8, discussion of possible modifications to the zoning code to allow fabric buildings for bulk storage. I do have a public comment that I'm gonna read into the record on this item. It's from Deputy Chief Josh Finke, who also owns Central Wisconsin Power Sports. Says, Dear Village of Weston Plan Commission and Village Board, recently I attended a village board meeting. As part of that meeting, there was a discussion regarding the salt shed. I am aware the village has received some very high quotes for the structure and the village staff has looked at other options to save costs. The proposal that was brought to the board, which did seem to have some support, was a fabric hoop type structure. First off, I would like to say that I do not have any concern with that type of structure. I personally feel it is appropriate. However, I do have a concern regarding the current code. It was mentioned in the meeting that the current code would not allow for that type of structure to be built. At that time, it was said that this would be taken to a plan commission meeting to change the code, but only for institutional. I own a business on Schofield Avenue. Since I have owned it, I have expanded my current building twice and purchased 2 adjacent properties. Each time I put additions on, I of course followed all of the codes. These codes required me to do things on both additions that I did not want to do, but also caused the buildings to be significantly more expensive. Since these structures were then assessed at an even higher rate, it also results in higher property taxes. Last summer, I met with village staff in regards to constructing a new storage shed on my back part of my property, well off of Schofield Ave. I just wanted to construct an inexpensive building to house my overstock inventory as well as trailers, etc. Basically, I wanted to construct a pole shed with a gravel floor. I was told this could not be done, that the building would have to match the current structures, and it would need to have a concrete floor, etc. So from the perspective of a business owner, it appears that we must follow all of the rules, even if it costs more than we can afford. However, if the village wants to construct a building and it is more than they can afford, the rules are just changed. I am in full support of changing the code so the village can construct the building they are asking for, but at the same time, I would ask that the rules for other businesses in the village are relaxed at the same time. I can understand not wanting every homeowner in the village to have a cheap Menards tarp shed in the backyard, but I think there is some room for compromise. Sincerely, Joshua Finke, Central Wisconsin Power Sports.
So that's, I guess, certainly the reason to bring this to the plan commission and talk about what the, again, those very concerns might be. We could certainly expect that as a concern to be brought up. I know we talk about it all the time. I guess we don't want to be in a position where we're not complying with codes. Is it, I don't know that we were saying it should only be considered in one specific zoning district, but certainly that would be part of what your discussion would be, is which zoning districts would you believe these to be acceptable, what conditions and so forth. My initial thought was it wouldn't, certainly we would not want to propose them as a principal structure. They would have to be an accessory use of some kind. We'd certainly want some standards, put in place. We can look at other zoning codes that may have permitted these. I know there are projects that people have worked on where they're permitted. So I guess, again, the topic is out on the table, I guess, or out on the floor to discuss what your thoughts might be along this line.
Does it need to be a zoning change or can it be a conditional use permit?
I guess that's a question for Jennifer. I don't believe they'd be even permitted.
They're only allowed right now in the ag districts. And I don't know if the actual performance standards for them are enough to use them in other areas of the village. So we just want to get your thoughts. We'll come back with, this is going to take a little bit to get through. We're going to have to bring back basically a marked up code for you guys to look at. But before we take and try to tackle this, we just want to get your thoughts on it. One of them being, do you want something like this to be allowed just on a parcel by itself? Otherwise, you would want to make it so that it can only be an accessory use to something else, principal on the property.
My thought was, I don't know that we want to see it as a primary structure. I don't know that I want to see this in a residential area at all. Those are my two initial thoughts.
Is it okay in the business park, but do you want it where Josh is on Schofield Avenue? I mean, that's the kind of things. Do you want it allowed in the B2? Do you want it allowed in B3? Is it more, you're okay with it in INT, which is gonna be us here? Maybe the GI, which is gonna be kind of the middle of the business park, or LI, what do you want those buffer standards to be? Do you want, if it's by residential, do you want a buffer like we typically have? So these are just some of the things to think about. Are there certain colors do you want to set that they have to be color requirements, material requirements? These are all things that if you have a conditional use permit, they would have to meet what you put in as your standards in order for you to give them that permit.
But if the standards are met,
Then they
Wisconsin
automatically get it,
as a shall issue, so you must.
So that's why we
allow.
have to really think about this. And this can be just an introduction to, I did not get a chance to get any quotes from anyone. They did not supply any.
Shay?
So is this building gonna go on this property?
That would be the current plan, yes.
So we change the zoning for this property or change the zoning for what?
No, so the zoning on this property is institutional, but that type of structure currently is not allowed on anything but an agricultural zone property. So it'd be making it so that that would be allowed on an institutional property and or any other zoning district that you would say it's allowed on.
Well, I struggle with this because I know we had people that had it in residential and we had to go through all kinds of issues in order to get it removed. We haven't, as Josh said, you know, we require certain things and I wouldn't want to see this type of building sitting on Grand Avenue or in Business Park. I mean, to be honest with you, there's a reason that we said just an egg. I understand it would be a solution for our salt shed, but I think we're gonna be accused of changing the rules to benefit us. And it does benefit the village as a whole, but I don't know.
I agree with your comment about changing the rule. That's the only reason this item is up for discussion.
Right.
Correct. Is there any other reason?
No.
I didn't think so. So, yeah, that, we're already guilty.
Yeah, well, so I agree that they don't have any place in a residential zoning. But the quality of these buildings now, they can be of such that they do make a lot of sense. I don't know if you ever looked at the building that the sawdust place has on Alderson. You know, the sidewalls are concrete, but the roof and all the rest is fabric, and that's been up for many, many, many years and still looks pretty good. You know, I mean, it's obviously there's maintenance with anything. It looks dirty at times, but I think that they're appropriate in commercial areas. Now, your point, you want them on Grand Avenue, well, certainly not as a primary structure, but maybe as an accessory structure. If there's a performance level that it needs to be, I think that they make some sense.
I mean, there is actually a structure like this right in front of Ace Hardware. If you ever drive past there, their greenhouse is essentially.
That's completely, there's no concrete base.
And there's no concrete base there either, so that's actually even it's a lesser structure.
I don't think we're comparing apples to apples.
No.
That's
Yeah.
greenhouses have their own spot in there. You can't, we're not talking greenhouses.
Well, to me, if we did do it, it would have to be a very limited usage.
They can be dressed up, you know, I mean, I've seen horse riding arenas that the upper portion is fabric and the lower portion is some sort of structure that has conventional type of siding on it, you know, to dress it up. So like I say, if we could come to an agreement on some standards, I think that, it could make some sense.
We can just get our logo plastered on the side of it.
No, because we'll change it in 3 years.
Restamp it. Yeah, and there's
So
different,
Michael, what's the height of that concrete wall on there?
so there's different types. There's, like this type that has a pier foundation. So it's separate pier pilings every, I think it's 16 feet. And then you put like a barrier concrete wall inside. There's this one on the right side that looks to have its own actual concrete footing with a foundation wall. And there's, this type, which is a kind of a precast concrete plank, kind of like how the outside walls of this building are put together. So there's all kinds of different requirements we could put on as far as what type of foundation system you'd use, the height of it, generally be like an 8-foot concrete wall. Just so as you're using a loader or anything inside of it, you're not gonna risk hitting the steel frame structure.
Right, it's safer.
Yep.
Because even when, forget the loader, when you dump that salt or whatever, or sand or whatever you got in there, if against that wall, it's gonna start pushing that wall back.
Correct.
Which,
There is no concrete in there.
Yep.
How often do we get
which
salt?
building are we, I'm sorry.
How often do we get salt?
Generally 1 bulk load a year and then a seasonal fill.
So how many trucks does it take to bring the one bulk load?
You do the math.
I know, but so in other words, more than one.
Yeah.
What I'm saying, so it's not dropped by a plane. So did they only sell you the best price by 50 trucks coming? Or can you break it up into 15, 15, 15, and 15?
Yeah, so we.
And then my next question is the building we have now, is that big enough?
The building we have now?
Because I've never heard anybody say they wanted it bigger than
No,
it is now.
no.
I'm going somewhere. So now, if that's the size that we have now, what is the size we're looking at for consideration? The same?
It's actually slightly
size?
smaller.
Ooh, music to my ears.
Yeah, we have a 3,200, yeah, okay.
I'm done.
We have a 3,200 ton building right now. The size of the building we're looking at was about 2,800 tons, so it's slightly less.
So at the $400,000 price point, which one of those that you just showed us are we looking at?
So that was on this pier foundation, but in talking with the builders, it's kind of this, there's not a huge variation. The specific one we talked to does these 2 types of buildings. They do the foundation with the wall or the pier. And, this one, I don't know what that price would be. But I'm guessing they're all generally in the same vicinity.
Who are these builders?
The one we talked to was Greystone Construction.
From?
They're based out of Minneapolis, but they have a local rep here that actually, I think he lives in Rothschild.
I think we should
Boston
get the
Supply
price
do
of that
it?
building too.
Does they don't?
Yeah, I'd like to see price points on all 3 types of structures personally.
I agree with that.
If I can just ask the dumb question, because I don't have familiarity with the existing salt shed other than some descriptions. There's no possibility for continuing to use it as it is now, where it is now?
We can use it where it is now, but if we want to sell that site.
Could we leave access as part of the sale process?
I mean, there's a.
I mean, how often are you in and out of there? First off, it's only part of the year, right? During the winter time.
Well, during the winter, but during a snowstorm, a truck fills up generally 3 to 4 times with salt. So, part of it is the operational, we're gonna have to leave an end loader over there. Do we leave it at night? Do we keep a garage over there so we have a place for our equipment to stay, or do we,
I just wanted to throw it out there and, is there any possibility of continuing to use the existing?
And we can make it work. I guess that's.
With part of the sale process, and I don't know the answer, but.
Yeah, but at what expense, and
Right,
that's what I say.
but at what expense, or, where would you have to put in a separate, I don't know.
And then while that property is for sale, you gotta leave the door open that if the right buyer comes in and wants the whole thing,
No, that's a good point.
then you gotta make that decision.
We're through this year, we're now talking next.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that'd be, you know, I'm talking with some of these guys that, you know, if we give them, you know, if we bid this in an April, May timeframe, it sounds like it'd be ready by September, October, so we would have it usable.
I think we're getting a little off track.
But yeah, I guess so the question is, yeah, you know, really the questions are, you know, would we want to entertain even using these? You know, what zoning districts then would we allow them in?
Well, like, I guess the question is what, yeah, basically what you just said.
Okay.
Are we on 8?
No,
Correct.
yes. I do agree with some of the other comments here that I think it should only be allowed as an accessory use. It should not be allowed as a principal structure. I definitely think there's some room for this type of use in the industrial park. Just my opinion. I'm only one.
Probably couldn't see it in that there's bigger, most of that has got bigger lots. And it's not crammed into a, I don't know. I'm struggling.
I do think it would not be a good idea in a residential area or on Schofield Ave.
Where would this go on our lot, on the east side?
Behind the building here, kind of on the east property line, well, whatever, you know, 30 feet off the east property line,
The northeast.
the northeast.
It's all zoned residential though, right?
You what?
I think that's.
It's not brought up to
Might be
the,
multifamily and then I'd have to look.
isn't that brought up to where like box drop is? Or no,
I don't think that's residential.
that furniture warehouse that's back here?
That's on the north
I think the one
side.
lot is multifamily back there.
Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of one of the questions too, you know, what is the buffer requirement to residential properties, you know, what is the setback?
So if we want to set this up so that we're changing the rules for us, so we are compliant.
Yep.
And right now, I think it's just woods, but if someone puts a house there, because it's single family, or even if it's multifamily,
Right,
Based
it would
on-
still be considered residential, so.
Yep.
I
Yep,
mean,
the buffers.
do you want it in your backyard if your house is there in 10 years?
Well, would you want the back, would you want the back of the building?
Should we move the 8x8 timber salt shed that we have over there now?
No, I'm just saying, so we have to look at that buffer though, right? So if they don't put it right on the property line maybe, or maybe move it in.
Well, I think anybody that puts a residential house back there is gonna look at the backside of this with all its garage doors and beeping, and all the backup alarms. They're gonna flip out. It's never gonna happen. You know, I don't think.
I guess my biggest question is, what zoning district should it be allowed in for permitted use? Now, we're going for this property, the zoning is what?
INT.
Okay, so we would have to allow it in that zoning.
Or everything could be a conditional use, except for ag as it currently is, you know. You could say that too, so it's not just.
Or
permitted.
business park, with,
I would think you would wanna look at
Yeah, you,
INT, the LI and the GI and not look at any of the others, cause
Okay.
B3 is sprinkled along Schofield Avenue.
you could make it a conditional use in all of those.
Yeah,
So it has to come in front of us anytime someone.
but if they.
But you shall issue, you must issue it if the conditions are met.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Jennifer that we get in a lot of trouble. Yeah.
Let's move down the block a little bit and let's look at the safety building. What's in that garage to the right?
Evidence?
No, evidence is in the building.
These three-story.
Garage.
The one all the way on the east side of
There's
the
a big
property.
garage on the east side.
I
Yeah,
thought that's,
it's evidence, there's automobiles in there for
Okay,
investigation.
so that kind of evidence, but all the other, the dope and stuff and the cash is all in the building.
I thought the
That I
DI
know,
or
yeah.
something in there for.
So we have big, we have objects in there like that.
There's cars and I think there's a boat at
I mean, there's quite a bit of room there. Why couldn't we put a salt shed there? This is just so damn beautiful over here. Now we got a salt thing here and salt all over the place. I'm just, I mean, where would we put the gas station? If we were to put a gas station here.
Is there any ability to locate this type of a building in the INT?
Not currently.
Where?
I mean, could we purchase a parcel of land in that and move it out there?
What's,
But
what's our Ryan Street property zoned right now?
Yeah, but now you got traffic, you got
All of our
daily,
stuff is institutional.
you're not in the right zone you know, if you're gonna do a truck 3 or 4 times during a snow event, we really wanna see where are we in the circle of, where are we? Where is this, where is the other
I
one?
mean, this site, to be perfectly honest, is probably better located based on how our plow routes are set up.
Okay.
Than even the one on Schofield Ave, just based on where the routes are. There's probably, except for maybe one.
And the equipment's here.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of Schofield with that big building they have, you know, back behind Greenheck. But then we have to put the equipment there, you know.
So Ryan Street isn't feasible to have it out there?
We only have one truck that really ever goes south of Highway 29, so now
You'd have just the time and the bodies and the wear and tear and the equipment, it'd be unbelievable, you know, when you are doing 3 or 4 times an event, oh my gosh.
You know, like in Schofield Ave, going up and down Schofield Ave, one pass for 3 trucks that empties those 3 trucks. So those 3, they salt Schofield Ave first thing, they all get refilled and then go out on their own routes. And then those 3 usually Schofield Ave at least gets done twice a snowstorm, if not 3 times. So
if this ain't the building, what about a pole barn? Is that uglier than this building? And would it be cheaper? I don't know, you know, put concrete walls up?
Oh, I thought of it too, I didn't got that such.
Oh.
If this is gonna work with by putting concrete, why can't you have a smaller, I mean, concrete walls with a shed?
Or does it rust or?
yeah, I mean, the rusting would probably be the biggest.
And we're not gonna come up with a solution here tonight.
No.
I've got him driving with me, otherwise I'd have left.
Yeah. I just need some
There's nothing warm at my
parameters
house
that-
anymore, so
So that we can
Why don't-
do something.
you're just got to, we got time on this. We're not gonna make this decision tonight.
Can I ask that
So
we
we can
have
find some other codes that we have.
figuring out what zoning would be permitted and what, I mean.
I just need to know which ones you want me to target, because there may have to be some, like, if you're going into the industrial park, we may have to do some changes in there with some of the standards. If you do B3 and there's even more,
So you're saying, changes, and I missed part of it, and I apologize. So like.
there may be some other parts of the code that have to be changed, because we have to
So
look
the
at.
business park, for example, if you're talking about that, you know, we have such generous lots out there. You know, could we change the code that the businesses that are there could actually build more on the creek?
They already do.
Yep.
This
I
code
know.
allows it to.
It is, so that's, okay. So I
Yeah.
thought that was supposed to be that way and it couldn't change, right? And we're
No.
pretty liberal with that we can let them locate there again instead of somewhere else. I
Yeah,
thought
they
we
just
could-
have to meet setbacks. The setbacks are less.
Okay.
There used to be something with a certain percentage, our percentage is lower in the code than what's actually in the covenant
I
of
mean-
the business park.
So I would hate to have somebody have to go somewhere else because they couldn't actually build on land that's just sitting there. And I know they got a great deal, good for them. But, you know, I look at right here, so you look at this building and how it all sat here, we had all this incredible room. And yet, we really don't have much parking. We got a lot of curbs and all kinds of stuff. We could dump snow on all these little spots. But when you really think about it, there's no parking here. And we're gonna go through one election event and we're gonna realize just how bad it is. That we've got all this land and all this grass and then yet we got a corner of trees over there. That's gonna be a huge pain point someday of no parking. You're already having staff parking way down there where I think staff is very much used to being next to a door. If any staff is parking in the back, that probably shouldn't be happening because they shouldn't be in the back of the building. But you know, when you look at it, I just look at this. I mean, I looked at Aldi's and I actually asked Aldi's, are you okay with 25 less parking stalls than Rib Mountain? And they said, yes, actually. I just saw so much landscaping and so much curb in there. I thought, oh my God, are we hurting business? This is gonna be a pain point here. This is gonna be a big one. So, I don't know, and then that business park just comes to mind that I just don't wanna hold people to stare at their lawn and do all the landscaping, cutting all the lawns. And they can't do more stuff there, so.
I guess.
That's all. And then what, if you're talking about changing the ordinance, How about if we change the one that allows that nut to put that metal shelf, that metal on Revi property? Where that, for 10 years, that metal leaning wall sat there, dangerous as hell with only 30 restraints right off of Ryan Street. We should have had some teeth on that. The neighbors told us about it. For 10 years, they sat there with that metal galvanized wall for a fence, all different colors. Something in our code book should say that is flat out wrong. And we should go and just take a baseball bat a little bit to somebody sometimes. That's just crazy when the wind can blow that down. I sat here and listened to those neighbors and I thought, God, what is going on? How can that happen? How can we allow something like that? And we have no teeth that stop something like that, right? Did anybody drive by there and take a look at that? Did anybody? Any staff? I did. A little disappointed that nobody else went and looked at it. Those neighbors, well, then put your hand up.
Been over there multiple times.
Yep. And what are we doing about it? For years, not months, not weeks, years.
I worked with them to get the section replayed.
But it hasn't happened. There's still pieces down, and one neighbor actually painted his whole section because of those 3 different colors of paint. These were really nice. They held their respect to the board that night. I don't know if you heard it or saw it. God, that was difficult to listen to. That you have somebody that just can't stand the neighbors so bad for years and years and years. This guy just he sold it apparently or whatever, but it's still sits
It's
there.
part of it.
Still has it.
That's
Yeah,
his.
that's just unbelievable.
He still has the property.
Yeah, but if he's unresponsive
Unresponsive?
to
Unresponsive?
Scott's emails,
Unresponsive? I'm
No.
not kidding you. I would have an end loader over there. I would tear that damn thing down. I'd build the fence and charge it on his taxes. I'm serious. This kind of stuff can't go on for 10 years because somebody is irresponsive. It just doesn't go that way. I have to spend $50 to put up a little portable shed in the backyard. And yet this joker can do something like that. It's embarrassing is what it is. It's really embarrassing to have such a great group of neighbors have to put up with that kind of crap with kids. And,
We
that
can
they
start
could blow
enforcement
over.
on it if you'd like, to do
Huh?
it tomorrow. We can start it. We have to start with citations.
Should that come from us though? Should that direction come from us? We talk about teeth and we talk about stuff and we talk about direction. Does it have to be noticed by a very, very part-time group of people that are changing every other year? I don't know. If we knew it was happening, it's back there. Would you live that way? Would you let somebody like that live like that? I don't know. I certainly would.
I'm not in their shoes, Mark.
I certainly would. But we should be. It's called customer service. Customer service. That's what this whole building does. It's customer service. If we lose track of that, then what are we doing? So.
We were attempting to work with the business owner because we also get told that we're not business friendly. So a lot of it was, we were trying to work with Jeff Novak and the neighbors. We spend a lot of time doing that. We could enforce right away.
I was here,
You could.
Jen, on my second tenure, I think. And there's only 3 people that have been in a boardroom that handled the board that way. And he's one of them. He was nasty. Nasty. He didn't have nothing good to say. It was, I'm doing it this way, and I'll never forget it. And I came to this meeting, 8 years later, and I'm sitting here and the whole neighborhood's here. I was absolutely shocked that was happening because of his doing. He wasn't trying to be nice. He's trying to be a jerk, and he put that galvanized up too, One thing, we're way off track. You gotta rein me in, buddy.
So, Mark, you were on the phone call when Steve had brought up the first comment, and it was basically a neighbor, a business owner saying that.
He saw the email too.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Josh's email.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think we all sitting in here need to be conscious of that, right?
Well, Josh in the center of his parking lot has got some cement things with some gravel, so he can get stuff off of his semis. He has no other place he ain't digging down. And I think he was gonna put it up in the front corner to take up less room and to be less you know, to have a much more friendlier parking lot and have not right in front, but apparently, I think we said, he couldn't have it there because of something, I couldn't remember what it was. But then the semi could come in and stay away from all the traffic, stay away from the customers and all his stuff for sale and still accomplish it. And then, but it wasn't, I can't remember what the deal was. It wasn't, good looking. And I said, well, just dress it up, put some advertising on there. Well, then the advertising, because he tried to do that, and then the advertising on this, you know, can you envision this? Can you, it's there right now, but it's in the center. It's in the center of his deal. And I said, well, why can't you put some, you know, advertising on there, dress it up a little bit? It could be one of your signs. It doesn't conform to the sign. And I'm sitting there just kind of pulling my hair out going, you know, what do we do? We're just trying to make this work. So, I mean, we make all kinds of concessions, so would this building be allowed to go here if it wasn't us?
Not right now.
No, I know.
It's not zoned.
Yeah.
How about the salt shed specifically?
Well, this building, and then we were gonna put a huge gas apparatus back there too. You know, that's a lot to put gasoline
Why would this
in.
building go in an INT?
What's that?
This building would go in an.
You're talking about the salt shed, right?
Well, no, under the current zoning that G&B had. Didn't we change the zoning? I thought we changed the zoning.
Well, we only did because we're a municipal building.
I know.
But if we weren't a municipal.
But that's
building,
hard,
it would
that's
have
hard for a private business to handle.
We would have met the requirements of the
Yeah. it would
LI
have
zoning
been
that it was.
Anything,
Well,
the setbacks would have
you know,
been
and you know, you've heard this enough, but did we meet the requirements with a screened-in fence around the existing building for the last 40 years? No. No, we didn't.
Well, because the code doesn't go retroactive.
It's just hard to tell, you know, people that are trying to, you know, make a payroll and trying to, you know, the only way they can stay in business is to make a profit. They don't just roll it over. It doesn't get rolled over every year and then they decide where to spend it. They have to make a profit. You know, 15% gets spent on labor and transportation and all the other supplies. And then this measly little 1 to 2 or 3% is what I get to do to blacktop my lot or do this or do that, or put in a screened-in fence.
I think your point is we have to be if we're gonna do this for ourselves, we have to be mindful of everybody else that we've said.
And that's why I'm asking what districts that you want, what kind of.
Explain
So-
what the different
so-
districts allow.
LI and GI, limited industrial, general industrial.
I agree.
INT is basically churches, the hospital, it's all your institutional type of uses.
School, cemetery.
Schools are in that one.
So we would be fine with allowing the school to put a bunch of these up?
That's a question. We have to look at it. I mean, that's why I asked if you want it as a principal structure.
That's the point though, because if we put it up here on INT for
I
ourselves,
understand that.
the school, who are we to say no to the school?
And who are we to say no to a church?
Correct.
Because they could do it. They could do that and put a garage door on it. And we can't say anything about it.
So I guess that's the question we have to answer because
Can we do, well, conditional use if you meet the standards it's in.
either that or we need to fork out another $600,000 and just bite the bullet and build $1 million salt shed over here.
I thought of that too.
Well, is that the right thing to do, or do we look at some other contractors and maybe not go through the source of contracting that we are not currently with?
Well, I
Maybe we
guess
pull away
what
from the architect and try to do something else. What's that?
It's still gonna be the same people.
type of material or whatever, because I kept doing this too, and even we talked, that is needed for the building to house salt?
I mean, traditionally, it's a wood structure or these fabric structures. I mean, as you search what people use for salt storage, that's really the two.
With concrete to hold it.
So that
It's so limited, any metal.
Yeah.
Well, no, I know
Structure's gonna
metal
rust.
you couldn't put in there, and
Yeah, but like Shawano on 29 has a cement, God, 8 to 10 feet, and it looks like it's poured. It looks almost like a potato holder, you know how those big potato facilities are down south? And then they've got wood above that.
Correct,
Well,
yeah.
what is Schrader's?
That's a wood building,
Who is Schrader?
right?
I thought it was,
It might be concrete.
Concrete.
Yeah.
Todd Schrader. He had,
Oh, Todd Schrader.
And we actually did, I mean, our last bid that we put out for the salt shed, I had two options. One was a wood building and one was pretty much a poured concrete wall. And
With wood on top?
with some wood on top and, you know, the trusses. And the wood building was still slightly cheaper than the poured wall concrete building.
And wood has come down, I don't know when the last time that bid is, but Joe, you probably know that too. Wood has come down to pre-COVID numbers right now, so.
Yeah, maybe, so do we rebid it?
We could do
I
that
don't know
too.
what that percentage would be.
Make an excellent point there, because yeah, it's come full circle.
I just.
And does it have to be breathable? I mean, salt, I don't understand how you store salt.
It's gotta stay dry.
Yeah.
You can't get wet. Otherwise it creates nightmares for you guys.
Yeah, then it chunks up and it.
Right. The other question is if they do the hoop building, what does that salt do to the galvanized posts?
So the ones we look at are, what are they, zinc coated, like they have some hot dip.
Hot dip galvanized
Yeah,
is what they use. Yeah, hot dip galvanized.
That's what they use along all the seacoasts for big buildings. Go to Daytona and look at the structure of the speedway buildings. Yeah, hot dip galvanized, you know, because they're the salt from the ocean is, yeah, so abrasive, right? Breaks it down.
I see this being damaged constantly.
And so the current use of outdoor storage or wholesaling is actually a conditional use in the institutional. And it's also got some things in like B3 and the LI and the GI. So that may be an option to put some kind of a performance standard that is basically for this type of structure that way. And then it could not be included in the B3. So this is all, I mean, there's ways to do it on uses that I just don't know because we haven't had a chance to
Sure.
figure out how other people do it, but we have that use. So it could potentially go in there when we just would need to have some standards for this type of a building.
I would say if we're gonna allow it in the districts that you just, but limit the size of it to not, I don't wanna say not be bigger than ours, because then it looks like we're just.
I was waiting to see how you're gonna phrase it.
I think you ought to.
Make it ourselves
You
look
ought to
bad,
actually have
but
a sign
I
that
would,
says you can't.
I would say we need to put some sort of constraint on it, that it can't be bigger than this size, and
And there may be some.
you could make that size bigger than what we have, I don't care,
It
but.
could be off of the lot too.
The principal structure.
Or the structure.
Yes, yep.
There's ways, so I'll just.
And only one per property, one additional structure of this type. You can't put up 18 of them in the parking lot of DC Everest. I mean, I'm not saying they would, I'm just.
Let's do what more.
I mean, well, can you put it in parentheses unless the village gets more or what? Is there a salt society? I mean, you know, just the northern states. You'd think there'd be some, you know, goofball out there with like, you know, salt sheds or salt society or, you know, how to store salt or.
It's no different than our temporary sign code. I mean, we put provisions on those for how big they have to be and how many you can have, so.
So I agree with Joe. I mean, you can make these buildings look very nice. It's just a matter of what requirements you have to do. I mean, if you remember back in the day in Cedar Creek, the whole golfing thing that was I think at the time it was
that was just inflated by air though. I don't think
Yeah,
that
we
was.
already have provisions for that because Everest was looking at
Oh, yeah, the
building
golf.
that.
Don't run the range.
So
Yeah,
But that was a different one than
do
like
proactive with that.
Darnell Leffel does these.
I don't
as well.
I remember that was, I remember going in there, I couldn't believe it.
Anyway,
It lifted up.
you can make these buildings look very nice. If you go over to Stratford, Bill's has three of them. Right outside and across the road from his.
Little service center? does?
Yeah. There's,
What are they, like snowmobiles and stuff in there?
he stores all the snowmobiles and four-wheelers and everything.
Oh, I know.
He's got pallet racking in there that, stuff on shelves.
I read like a barn or
There's
what?
a lot of it.
Yeah.
Just think about the advantage to having an opaque roof that allows light in.
Oh, true, that's true.
yeah.
So they're typically used for non-heated storage, and the whole deal with salt is, like you say, you wanna keep the water off it. Well, that's the same with anybody's inventory of snowmobiles or whatever kind of
It just doesn't
seasonal.
need to be heated, it just needs to be dry.
And you know, Bills are all gravel.
Yeah, those are all gravel, yeah.
They're all gravel. So, I mean,
There's a place and a reason for it that we should be able to accommodate these uses. Doesn't really make a lot of sense.
I'd agree with that also. Yeah.
You know,
Okay, I think I have parameters, so I will come up with something and bring it back.
And if you're asking for colors, I would say earth tones.
Yeah, no.
I don't want a pink one of these.
Weston Dome Village.
Harmonious with the surrounding building.
The reason, you know, so again, the reason that they're typically light colored is because they're opaque, they allow light through. So
yeah,
if
a lot of
you
light.
require it to be dark brown, you're not gonna get
Yeah,
much
you don't
light.
want that. A lot of them,
You can't put no casing, window casements or nothing in there, you're right. So the light makes very much sense, yeah.
actually Darnell Leffel, he had coverall, was out on, same road as, no, his
Right,
name,
we beat that to death.
was that?
We beat this to death.
I have no attention span.
But anyways, he had his offices and everything in there. So, I mean, you could do some really nice stuff with these buildings. His were typically all white. And again, because it was so bright in there. And you can hang lights off of them and do electrical and do all
I
kinds
guess
of.
I would want it more for story.
All right, I think that's enough of that. Staff reports, items 9, 10, and 11. It's your pleasure.
Motion to accept,
Second,
acknowledge, I should say.
Okay, motion by Ermeling, second by Mumper. On the question, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. So carried. Miscellaneous 12, project updates. Kristen Fish Peterson, TID 2 activity update and status of 5500 Schofield Avenue site.
Kristen gave us a kind of a synopsis of the things that she's been involved on. And I'm trying to give you kind of an update as time went by. I presume everybody looked at the report she put in there. She'd offered to be on the phone tonight. She was traveling from Iowa, I guess, not knowing what time it was gonna be. I could still try to get her on the line if you like. Otherwise, I'm not sure what more to add at this point. I guess if you want more detail, then let me know. We can try to get more detail next time.
She's got some nice bullet points there.
Okay.
Do you have an idea of what we paid for services in 22?
I can get you the summary on that.
It's on a per basis, right?
Right now, it's
Yeah.
hourly.
Yeah, hourly.
And I think one thing I don't know if she mentioned it in this email, but that we talked about that last time, what would be how would we incentivize it for her? I think, she said she wrestled with, is it a referral from us? Is it her prospecting or what? I mean, we didn't, and she's explaining some of the difficulty, the market conditions she's saying right now. She doesn't hear that they're very conducive, but these deals sometimes take a while. So, I mean, we heard tonight, the bank's proposal on a development. That's good news, obviously, on Schofield Avenue. Raleigh Lockery tried to contact me around the holidays. I've been trying to get back in touch with him, but I don't know what his reason specifically is for right now.
It sounded,
I suspect it's
it
for.
sounded like it was, because didn't we get somebody asked about the, I think he's bringing back his multi-use next to the Caribou.
Okay, and that was what Kristen thought it was about, but she said she's been having trouble getting a hold of him as well. So we're still in the process, we're still gonna try to get in touch with Raleigh. So.
We are, and Gary brought it up, there is, the people who own the Wendy's site have a different chain that they're gonna be bringing into the building. So we met with them before Christmas to talk about, it's
So you were
basically,
serious?
it is,
Yeah,
it's called,
seriously?
look it up, it's called
Fuzzy Tacos.
Fuzzy's Tacos.
It is not.
It is 100%.
When I got it, I had to look it up, I was like, are you serious?
I actually
It's
thought that was a joke.
franchise.
No, I'm serious.
I didn't want to say it again. I didn't want to say it again.
They have, it's a franchise out of Texas, and the closest one I think is in the cities.
And I'll tell you
So-
what, they've got a lot invested in those plans.
It's
It's very detailed plans.
Baja Tacos with
So
outside
street tacos.
street tacos.
Can we make them
type
change the
thing.
name to street tacos? Fuzzy, I don't understand the fuzzy, I
It's
do
weird,
understand the.
it's the special seasoning on the chips or something, go look at it, It has an outside patio.
F-U-Z-Z-Y, right?
With an
Yeah,
F.
look at
With an
it.
S.
Yeah,
Fuzzy.
fuzzies.
Plural.
Okay.
F-U-Z-Z-Y. No, I, he said I. No. So when is that supposed to happen? It's out for bid.
It's out for bid. They're gonna
Yeah, it's out
change
for-
the
Oh, that'd be
facade.
awesome.
So they're completely moving forward with it.
Outdoor patio.
Wow.
The board should see a liquor license request probably.
Liquor license too?
Yeah, there's an
When's
outdoor
the-
patio.
You know,
Right?
it's just one more reason to come to Weston.
Now they will, because.
Probably tomorrow.
Tomorrow, I will get a call.
Channel 9's not here yet.
We gotta get them to make t-shirts.
I want to see.
Follow me to Fuzzy Tacos?
Wow. All right.
Development of Alpine Mobile Home Park.
She's been talking to the realtor that has that.
Oh, that's the vacant property. That's the one over by Wiggly Field? Yeah.
Yep. Karen Hacking is the representative.
So if you're coming, if you're going east, I just went by Tommy's, okay? And now, as I'm coming past Tommy's, I can see Wiggly on my right, and then I can see Teddy's house right before, right?
Yeah.
Okay? So there's a tree in Teddy's, a property that's at least a 45-degree angle, a very, very large tree. That when it goes, it's gonna take down the power lines and it's gonna be all the way across the median. And I remember calling Scott, and I think he just had decided that he's gonna retire. And I said, Scott, you gotta drive by that tree. He goes, where is it again? He goes, well, it's on Teddy's lawn there. He goes, not my tree. I said, okay, all right. And I forgot to bring it up to somebody else. But anyway, I'm serious, that thing it's on a
It's funny
45-degree angle.
If it's not at an angle that it could get down power lines, a lot of times the power company will offer to take it down.
I know,
Yeah.
you go by it and the bottom is kind of lifted out and. Okay.
Because they took one down for us.
Hopefully don't kill somebody on Schofield Avenue, right?
Anything else on the too?
Oh my God.
I'm just really
Planning alternate routes.
You,
For the one access.
you better hope they have a meal wagon, because you can get a fuzzy taco wagon in your parking lot. I'm telling you, you won't know what to do with all the people visiting, so.
All right,
Fuzzy's Tacos.
13, announcements and commissioner remarks. Jim?
I'm not.
Gary? Joe?
I'm good.
None.
Get your fuzzy taco.
I think we've heard enough out of you.
Yeah, well, I'm done. I'm never gonna bring you again, because I can't leave. I was gonna leave like 4 times, I go, shit, I gotta borrow my car.
Shane? I've got nothing. Next regular meeting date, Monday, February 13th, 2023 at 6 PM.
Okay, I'm back.
I'll
It'll be
entertain a
Valentine's
motion.
Day the next day.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, Jared.
I didn't catch who had the
We made the
motion.
motion.
Motion, second. Okay. By Zagami, second by Gern. On the question, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Oh, yeah.